Greetings, class. Welcome back to another session here on teaching English to English language learners in specific areas, specifically math, science, and social studies. Today we're going to be looking at teaching math to English language learners, and we're going to be using the CALLA approach. CALLA stands for CALLA stands for Cognitive Academic Language Learning Approach. So we're going to be investigating that. The textbook that I would recommend you have for this is this book right here, the CALLA Handbook. Today we're going to be pulling stuff out of Chapter 9, which talks about this. Specifically, we're going to be going through a mathematics curriculum, a standard mathematics curriculum that was developed for kids in the public school system. We're also going to be looking at the principles and standards that mathematics teachers and educators in first language acquisition use and have set up for teaching native speakers, regular speakers. Then I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to be talking about math difficulties that English language learners have. What issues are they going to have? Obviously, it's all going to be language arts related, but it's going to be specific to mathematics. And then we're going to talk about how we can take those two components and infuse them together when we're trying to have a mathematics classroom for English language learners. We'll also talk about language learning strategies for the English language learner in the math class. All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is the mathematics curriculum, and it should include, this is according to and I forget their name, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. And I'll have that information available for you on the website. They had done research and had determined that because of the recent changes, things like No Child Left Behind and the need to have higher order thinking involved, that they wanted to include these 5 components. One is a conceptual understanding. Okay, in other words, the abstract elements of mathematics. It also should have some form of procedural fluency, that you can actually talk your way and process your way through math problems and math difficulties. Strategic competence, strategies for understanding and solving, getting around math problems. Okay, so you're going to have some type of strategic competence. Adaptive reasoning. Adaptive reasoning is the ability for you to look at, ponder, reflect on the problems that you have and how you can adapt your thinking and your strategies to try to solve that particular problem. And the last one is a productive disposition. Now, this idea I find rather interesting, that they're trying to encourage students to be positive about math instead of apparently not positive about mathematics. So and I can't agree more. If you're going to be teaching a topic, you should want to get your students encouraged, excited about it. I remember friends of mine who were very, very much into extensive graded readers, and they were gaga over the whole process, the whole idea. And this text here by I don't know how to say her name, Ul-Shamat, same idea. Be excited, have a good attitude toward mathematics. Don't be down and negative and pessimistic. Again, I thought that was interesting. In addition to developing this generic curriculum, the Math Teachers Association also devised some principles and standards for school mathematics. And the list here is about 6 things, but they thought that teachers needed to teach both your traditional math, right? Your basic math, your algebra, geography, your basic concepts and formulas and those kinds of things. But you'd also be teaching higher order thinking, the ability to reason, to be logical, to try to come conclusion. Okay, so you wanted to have both of these. It's kind of like in the literacy world where they say, well, you got to teach reading, but you should also teach critical thinking. They're doing the same thing here over in the mathematics area. I think that's a very good idea. So the 6 principles and standards that they're referring to are listed here. They are equity, curriculum, teaching, learning, assessment, and technology. And I'm just going to run through these real quickly here. Equity, everybody should have high expectations. Everybody should have high expectations. Regarding the curriculum, it should be focused on the skills to be studied. whether they're in small chunks or whether they're loud. It should be coherent. It should be understandable. It should be articulated properly to each student, to each level. So it should be appropriate to their level. So you should have a curriculum, again, that's focused on what you want them to learn. Again, that's the traditional and the higher order thinking. It should be understandable to them, coherent to them, and it should be appropriate to their level. Teaching. Teachers have to know the content, okay? And that means you're going to have to know things like algebra, geometry, your basic math components. You're going to have to know that content. You're also going to have to know your students' needs. What do they know? What do they need to know? Okay? You have to understand, know what those are, which means you're going to have to do some type of, down here a little lower, you're going to have to do some type of assessment so you can know what it is that they need. And you're going to need to know how to motivate students. And in my opinion, that's probably one of the largest things a language teacher has to do, is to be able to motivate their students. So that's teaching. Learning, you must find ways to have your students build new knowledge based on the old knowledge that they have. Okay, so what they have is okay, and it's their foundation, but they need to build on that. Remember, their cultural differences might be different, right? Their cultural differences might be different. Their cultural understanding might be different. So you need to, again, know your students well enough so that you can compensate for that. Next element here is assessment. You need some form of assessment to, verify that yes, these students are indeed learning. In the past, we would say, oh, you need to have tests and exams, okay? But the idea here under assessment is it's not to give them a grade. It's not even to let them pass a course, but it's to help them and you recognize that they understand the content so that they can move forward. And that's the important thing for an assessment. So you're going to inform your students where they are, what they know, what they need to know, and also you. Also, the assessments can help you decide and gauge how you run your classroom. And lastly, you're going to be using technology. Technology today influences and enhances learning. So we should be incorporating the tools that are there. And I'm constantly thinking that we should be using these tools regardless. I know my kids right now who are in grammar school, they love these math websites. And they go there and they learn. And to them it's fun. Literally, when they're done doing homework, they go down and turn on the computer, and what do? They go to one of these math websites and they play these games. They try to solve these problems. They enjoy doing it, using the technology. Those are the 6 standards that were set up by the Teachers of Mathematics Association, and I think, again, very well done. In addition, in these principles and standards, in addition to those 6 that were just mentioned, there's also the understanding that teachers need to use worthwhile tasks. I'll be honest, I do not know where CALLA gets this idea when they use the word task, but there's a whole separate world out there called task-based language teaching that simply fits right in here. And she doesn't mention them in her texts regarding this idea of worthwhile tasks, but it fits perfectly. Giving a task instead of focusing on the mathematics, or giving a task instead of focusing on the language, you provide a task that's worthwhile to them. Some activity that they can do, that they can use, that's going to be helpful to them in their real world. And so that's the idea with this worthwhile tasks. So you're going to be teaching mathematical basics. You're going to be teaching them the foundations that they need to know, regardless of what field it is: algebra, geometry, high school math, grammar school math, where you're teaching plus, minus, multiply, divide, fractions, decimals, that kind of thing. But in addition to just teaching those, you should put them in some type of opportunity for them to actually do those mathematical problems in a real-world situation, something they can actually use. Some way that you can encourage them to want to learn. You give them a problem they need to figure out so that they can complete their task. So it's going to stimulate learning. It may actually encourage them to go discover, well, I need to figure out how to do this particular problem, and I go out and I go look for it. Encourages them to have a can-do attitude. I can solve it. Worthwhile tasks. Use tasks to introduce the main math topics, to challenge their intellectual development. Give them a challenge. Kids, people, love challenges when they believe they can do it. Okay, Okay, and that's where this whole idea at the end here about generating motivation. Okay, generating motivation for math. You as a teacher want to encourage these students to believe the fact that they can do it. It's a big thing. So you want to encourage intellectual development. Try to make a connection between the concepts of mathematics and the procedures, the methods that they would use in order to complete a task, in order to get their project, in order to get their problem solved. So you have these basic math concepts, and now I've got to import them into some method for trying to solve a problem. We're going to talk about strategies a little later. Encourage student interest. Again, motivate students. Try to get them involved in the process. Try to help build up students' prior knowledge. Try to use what they have already in the past. Use what they have from their first language, from their first culture. Try to incorporate that in so they can build on it. And again, try to generate motivation in mathematics. Some teaching implications based off of the work that mainstream teachers have regarding English language learners. One, teacher should provide opportunities to practice and solve problems. Understand that English language learners are going to need more time, so give them practice, give them opportunities to practice, even in class. So you want to give them opportunities to do this. You want to give them opportunities to ponder the concepts and theories. Give them time to think about it and maybe even write about what these concepts are. Maybe they can elaborate some of their problems or whatever. Give them opportunities to offer feedback, discussion, so they can negotiate meaning between each other, so try to understand what it is they have to do, and also, raise questions that they might have about what's going on. All this to say, these three elements here means that it's going to take time, right? These all take time. And the big thing that you want to provide for your students is the opportunity to do all three of these things. And it's going to mean that you're going to have time in order to do them. All right, let's move on to the next topic here, which is what are the difficulties in teaching this kind of math, which is actually the new kind of math, where you're teaching traditional on the high order. Students are going to have, English language learners, they're going to have problems. Mathematics, like any other field, requires language, is dependent. It's kind of like a foundation, because you have to be able to explain things. You need to be able to prove things. So language is necessary for understanding and for development. Therefore, your students are going to have to know math. All right, your students are going to have to know the language of math. All right, and so there are going to be language difficulties. One will be vocabulary, and there is limited but still robust amount of vocabulary that they're going to need to know. And so we should identify what those are, make sure that your students have extra time, extra opportunity to practice and understand what those vocabulary words are. There's going to be syntax, things that we do that with mathematics that we don't do in other areas, right? 2 + 2 is, and just formations like that they're going to need to know. What's the square root of whatever, and you have to figure out what those are, obviously, but you should have them listed and just put in a list so that you can use them and teach them to your students. And again, as I said before, you have to know the content, and you have to know what square roots are and whatever the other concepts in mathematics that you're going to be teaching, whether it's geometry, algebra, or basic math. Right? There may be socio-linguistic concepts. There may be cultural background issues that you're going to run into. The article that we read describes some guy who didn't understand what it meant to run laps on a track. So that was part of the word problem. So-and-so has got he's got 15 minutes and he can run 3 minutes. He can run around the track in 3 minutes. How many? He doesn't understand what a track is. He doesn't know what a lap is. And so for him, he was a little more confused. It was a little more difficult for him. Cultural backgrounds. It may be the way that we draw our formulas, the way we draw our problems isn't the same. It's not the same in all languages. In all cultures, and so maybe you need to explain, what's this bar mean for the division, or for, why for the power symbol and where it is, and what those things mean, because that may not be self-explanatory to all of your learners. You may have some type of a discourse competence, so that your students have to be able to understand how to have discussions and understand what's going on in the classroom, the give and take that goes there. And so that's going to be another area where your students might have trouble, which means they may be sitting and be quiet. You need to find ways to encourage them to do that, lowering the affective filter so that they feel more comfortable discussing and talking about it in class. And then lastly, motivation's always an issue. As I said before, one of the biggest things that I think we as teachers should be doing is encouraging them, showing our students that they can actually do it, getting them to believe the truth that they can succeed. So many people believe the lie that they can't do it, and therefore they don't try, and they fulfill their belief. But if they had really believed, they would be able to do more. All right, so there are difficulties in mathematics. I don't know that any of these difficulties are insurmountable. The concepts in mathematics are rather logical and understood by most anyone. Your biggest area here is probably math, is probably vocabulary, and some syntax, and then motivation. I think the other things, trying to get them to think in higher order, is going to be the same as any other teacher anywhere else, any other math teacher. So the bigger issue is going to be the language elements that are there. But if you're going to be teaching math, you have to go through you have to work with all of these. Some cultures as well discourage higher order thinking. Not that it can't be done, but that it's discouraged in schools because, I take that back, it's not discouraged, it's ignored. Because they're too busy doing other things. As I mentioned before, countries that focus a lot of work on memorizing characters, the Chinese language, for example, they spend a lot of time trying to memorize all these characters, and because they do, they have a higher regard for rote memorization and a lower regard for abstract reasoning. Not that they can't do it again, but it's just not the emphasis in their classes. Here in the U.S., we're emphasizing it more. So, all right. The math classroom for English language learners. Again, make sure you include worthwhile tasks, something that they can actually use, scenarios that actually fit into their daily lives. Try to establish low affective filters. Make it comfortable for them. Try not to add too much pressure. Again, I believe that too much pressure is bad, too little pressure is bad. You want to have a challenge. You want to challenge them, but you don't want the challenge to be overwhelming, so that they don't want to continue. They think that they're going to fail. They go into the mainstream classrooms if you're doing a pull-out program. Oftentimes that's what they feel. It's too much. I can't handle it. They're in the ESL classroom. They're in the pull-out. You can lower that filter to make it easier for them. But again, keeping it too low may also be a detriment. Focus on math-specific vocabulary. Again, make that list. That special list of vocabulary so that you know your students can master these early on so that they'll be able to understand. I would do the same thing with syntax. Try to identify the syntax, even the phrases that are often used in those classes, and put them on a list so that your students can use them. Put them in worthwhile tasks so that they can practice with them. Okay? Next, talk about math. In the classroom, talk about the word problems that are there. Talk about the processes that someone is using to try to figure out what the answer is. In actuality, many people don't do this, even native speakers. So doing this in a second language is doing two things. It's helping them learn to articulate logical information properly. Big plus. There are a lot of people who don't try to articulate the thoughts in their head in such a way that it makes sense and is understandable. So you're helping them do that. You're helping them to articulate higher order thinking, and you're also helping them learn the basic math skills. So it's an excellent thing that you can do. And have them discuss with each other. You also should be monitoring. Watch what's going on so that you can see and hopefully help students when they're running into problems. Include reading and writing in your classes. Have them write math problems. Have them read math problems. Have them write about math, okay? What was interesting, what was good, what was frustrating, that type of thing. So then again, they can have more opportunity to interact with it in all the skills. Some learning strategies for English language learners and math class. You should link math to some path of solution. Here's a way that you can solve this. In other words, you should provide them a framework for walking through the process so that they can do it by themselves. Really what is going on here in CALLA is they're saying try to develop independent learners. get math ELLs to a point where they don't need you as a teacher anymore, but they can do it themselves, right? So show them that path to a solution. Okay? Develop mentally active students. They're not just doing some rote thing, but you're getting them involved in the process. They're motivated to try to find the answer, and they want to be involved, and they're trying to put these pieces together, right? Develop problem-solving steps. Okay, this is basically going back to Vygotsky for language, where you have someone come alongside and help out. You're doing the same thing here. You model the process of trying to find this answer. You may talk through it. You may, use you do the steps on the board and you walk through it with them so that they can do it themselves, right? Also include language learning strategies. I take that back. Try to incorporate learning strategies for solving these math problems. Let them know what the strategies are so that they can try to use them when they're learning. And these are going to be metacognitive and task-based strategies. And we'll look at those right now. All right, regarding your metacognitive strategies, help them to plan, organize. Okay, so you give them a problem or a word problem or whatever, and they have to find, okay, what's my goal? And what are the procedures to make that goal a reality? Okay, help them to organize that, to plan that, right? Help them to monitor and identify what's going on. So they create a goal, and they identify the goal, and they create a plan to solve this. And as they're going through the process, right, you have them monitor. Are they actually succeeding in what they're doing? And if they're not, maybe they need to restructure, replan. They have to go back to that first step again. As they're going through this, they should be evaluating as well. Right? Did I succeed in doing the steps that I wanted to do in the proper way? Did it give me the right result? Okay, well, why did or why didn't it? Okay, so you want to develop these independent learners. These are all just the things that are going on in your head, right? Planning, organizing, evaluating, just like writing a paper type of thing, the 4 steps. Task-based strategies. Make sure that they have that background knowledge and make sure that it's active, right? If they have it, they should be able to use it, right? Encourage them to be bold, to be risky. Let them do inferences, right? Let them do inferences. Let them make predictions. Find out if what they're thinking is right. Let them take chances. Let them learn failure is a good thing. I don't know how many students I've met who are afraid to make a mistake. Mistakes are good. I actually tell my language learners, if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning fast. So go on out there and make some mistakes. I want to encourage, lower that affective filter so they feel brave enough to go out and make mistakes. Okay, go out and take chances. Excellent way to learn. So let them go do inferences and make predictions. Help them try to classify or sequence. Again, we go back to this whole idea of organizing. Okay, put in the steps, 1, 2, 3, right? Or to classify. What are the groups that are involved here? What's the process? What's the pattern that's here? Help them try to identify what those are. Other things they can do are make pictures. If you have a word problem and you're having difficulty, okay, make pictures. Have them draw the pictures so that they can see what they are and place things out. Place things out in front of them so they can literally move them around. I had a friend once who was redesigning the office space in our teacher's laboratory, and I'm kind of eyeballing everything. Oh, maybe we can put this there, we can put that there. This lady comes with an 8.5 piece of paper drawn to scale, and she has every desk drawn to scale, and she's literally moving all these things around. And I just looked at her and I said, "That's brilliant. That was a brilliant idea." Same thing I did with drawing pictures. You can't picture it in your head, well then she put it on paper. She literally draw them out, right? You may want to do, physical responding. Total physical response type of, actually doing the movements so that you can see what's going on when you're trying to do the math, in something. You may want to do substitution, where you have one problem but you can't really see or figure it out, so you substitute for something else. Take notes, right? As you're going through this process, you want to take notes. As obviously when you're listening to a class as well. Try to use a graphic organizer to help you try to organize. Go outside and get resources, right? Here's this problem, and I don't know how to, I think I need A, but I don't know about A, so I'm going to go out and get information. Again, making independent learners. Cooperate, work with other people. Get information from other people, right? And then talk to yourself. It's amazing. Why isn't this in metacognitive? Talk to yourself. Talking to yourself, sometimes it helps you find an answer. Love this idea. Talk to yourself. All strategies for trying to solve your math problems. Okay? Metacognitive and task-based strategies. All right, learning strategies to solve a problem. Here's procedures that are in this in the CALLA text that we're reading. One is identify the problem. Okay, how do I identify the problem? I can do things like using background data. I can use images or make inferences. I can summarize. I can cooperate. Okay, those are just the list that she has. Identify the essential information. Okay, in other words, find all the parts. Look at all the details for all the individual elements. Okay, work with others to try to have them look at those and other elements. Cooperating is a wonderful tool. Make a solution. Make a plan. Okay, this is how we're going to do this, so let's predict it. If this is going to be our solution, what are we going to need, right? Well, let's try to use the images in our stepwise, or take notes, or organize it so that you have your step down type of thing. Here's the plan of attack, right? Okay, after the plan is made, you solve it. Okay, enact the plan, execute the plan. Obviously, you want to be evaluating as you go, and executing the plan may, again, require to be looking at all those parts and, of course, monitoring what's going on, and then confirm your work. Evaluate it. Did you succeed? Okay? Manage your own learning. You can do this by yourself. Again, once they learn the process, they don't need you as much anymore, and that's the goal, to develop independent language learners. And that's all for this chapter. If you do have questions or problems, please let me know, and I will see you on the boards. Let you know that I'm also in my office on Mondays after noon. I'm in my office on Tuesdays and Thursdays until noon. You can always catch me online and on Skype.